What does that mean, though?
Are you on a different?
Okay. So you guys want me to take it from the top? I'm kidding.
No.
So I think, just to continue the thought about the strategic plan, I think that, we've really used this as a guiding document, which I think is what it was intended to be when it was adopted 5 years ago. And some things that, we're particularly proud of. And again, I'm the business official. I point to Dan and Chris and the rest of our instructional directors for the work that they've done in connection with the plan. Adopting new ELA curricula from CKLA and EL education. The work that Lisa Goldberg, who you've met with several times on community schools and making sure that we have trauma zone and contact specialists in our buildings and building student support systems so that we can monitor and support student mental health. It's so important post-COVID. And then the work that Dave London and all of our directors have done around professional development, just to making sure that we've built capacity within our system to improve both the academic and emotional supports for our students. And one of the things, this has been a difficult budget season, but despite the budget challenges, we believe that the progress made on the strategic plan is sustainable. So with that, let's jump into our revenues. So this is where our first big assumption is. By law, foundation aid was scheduled to increase by $926 million statewide for the 2024 year. But it's as proposed in the governor's proposal, it's only increasing $507 million. And so the executive budget, as you guys know, underfunds foundation aid by about $886,000 for North Syracuse. The budget isn't final in New York right now. And so we're making the assumption, we've got some indications that they're working hard to fund foundation aid. So this budget that you're going to look at tonight assumes that foundation aid will be fully funded in the final New York budget. The other big aid we get is building aid. We've talked about this before. We've got a lot of projects underway, but we don't get any building aid until we complete the project and file our final cost report. So we've trued up our building aid based on what we think we're going to get next year, and that's in this budget as well. Property tax cap, I've already talked about this. It's going to be limited. Our tax cap's limited. Our tax levy increase is limited to the tax cap despite the inflation, and we don't have any federal stimulus money built into the budget for next year. So forgive me on this format. I will make sure I clean this up for next week, but these are the numbers. We're looking at about a 4.39% increase in total revenues. General state aid is a big one there at 2.85% or $2.5 million. The other ones that are worth noting, and I'm going to talk more about this in a minute, we're increasing our fund balance utilization to close the budget gap. We're using our ERS reserves, and I'm going to talk a little bit about ERS. Those costs have gone up quite a bit, and this is the time to use our reserves. I'll talk a little bit about our tax levy in a moment. So I show this pie chart every year, and the primary reason I show this is that between the tax levy and general state aid, those are our big pieces of revenue. The tax cap is at 2.98% increase, or about a $3 million increase. This is the tax cap calculation that we filed with the Comptroller's office. Impact on taxpayers, it's about a $55 increase on a $100,000 home across our 3 towns, or about $4.59 a month. This is our, one of our esports teams, and that won the championship. I think you met them here. It's important, I think, also to talk a little bit about Micron. There's been so much talk about Micron, but I just want people to know that the economic impact of Micron, specifically a pilot agreement and any pilot revenues that would come to the school district, those are not in effect yet. And the primary reason for that is the CHIPS Act, while approved, all the administration hasn't been done yet. And therefore, I believe that the county has not signed their pilot agreement with Micron at this point, and therefore the 24-25 school year will not have revenues from a pilot agreement. And I just wanted to mention that. This was Chip Camp, and when the kids visited Cornell, you've seen this picture before. It's a great opportunity for our kids. This was a robotics challenge, and a number of our kids from Gillette Road competed and did well in that. Let's switch to the expenditure side and look a little bit about on our expenditures. And this is, I don't want to call this a good news story, but we started the year, I came in here and I told you that our healthcare costs were going to go up by about 11.4%. Then I got and we have an independent consultant that analyzes the healthcare trends, looks at our specific school trends, and does projections of our healthcare costs. And so the consultant does 4 passes at this. You think about how difficult this is. We're trying to predict a health benefits plan year that starts at the end of August, starts September 1st and goes to August. So he's planning so far in advance, but he looks at it 4 times. First time he looked at it, he predicted over 11%. The second time he had it at 10.2%. I just got his predictions and we're down to about 5.4%. So that was a big, so you might say, whoa, how did we close our budget gap? Well, one factor was we lowered our projections for benefit or healthcare costs as a result of those projections. Now we'll do one more pass. So there's nothing guaranteed that it's going to stay at that 5.4%, but that's really encouraging. TRS and ERS, are another component of our benefits, or another component of our costs. And TRS is just up slightly, an increase of about 0.25% of payroll. ERS, the rate actually went up 2.1%. It's almost like it's almost a 20% increase in the cost of ERS. So as a result of that, that's why we're using our ERS reserves. And I'll point that out when we get to our reserves analysis. I mentioned already that salaries and wages are estimated based on this being contract negotiation years. Fuel costs have been volatile. We've adjusted our budget to reflect our latest estimates for fuel costs. And our energy costs, we participate in a consortium called NSMIC, the New York State Municipal Energy Consortium. And that supply agreement ends next month. But we've received the bids, and we've now reflected in our budget the estimated rates based on our historical usage. And so fingers crossed, we had a warm winter this year, but we tried to look back at some historical usage and try to put a good number in there. But again, that was not as bad a news as I thought it was going to be for energy costs. So that was encouraging. So how does that work out? You can see big numbers here. Salaries and wages and benefits are big components. You'll notice that our total expenditures are up just slightly more than our revenues. And that's what's causing our deficit. After, several months of working on the budget, we have about a $296,000 deficit, but we got a week. We got a week to work that out. So hopefully we'll be able to figure some things out in the next week and before the adoption next week. I point this out every year. Salaries and benefits are a huge component of our budget. We're a people-based business. That is the most important thing we do, is put an adult in front of children. So as we've mentioned before, that's our objective as we work through the budget, to make sure that we are having the right people in the right place to support our kids through their education. Let's talk a little bit about buses. We've talked a lot about zero emission buses, and I want to just start this conversation with, we're not asking the voters this year in the budget vote to support zero emission buses. That doesn't mean that we're not supportive. It just means that we're juggling our fiduciary responsibility with our environmental responsibility. And so we've done the things that New York has asked us to do. We have completed our fleet study, analyzing the feasibility of electric buses for the routes that we run. We've applied for both NYSERDA and EPA grants, and we were awarded a NYSERDA grant. And we still find at this point that even with the grant, the cost of an electric bus is significantly more, even with the grant, than a gasoline bus. And so what we'd like to do is we'd like to just pause, not ask the voters at this time to support the purchase of a zero emission bus, but to keep working on the EPA grant and may perhaps come back to the board and the voters in the near future with an opportunity that's more economical. Having said all that, we're going to have a vehicle bonding proposition, which does not include zero emission buses. But you know, our plan is we always try to replace a bus at around the 10-year mark with about 180,000 miles on the bus. And we do that because of our concerns about the ability to pass inspection. We still use a lot of salt on our roads up here, even in a winter like this, and the frames just don't hold up over time, and it becomes difficult to pass inspection. Also, an older bus is more expensive to maintain. We try not to do engine and transmission work. And when buses get over 10 years old, there's no more warranty, you know, on those engines and transmissions. And if you run them, you're going to end up servicing those things, and they're pretty expensive. So those are the reasons why we try to get rid of a bus after 10 years. So just as we've done in the past, we're going to stick with the program that's been tried and true and successful here in North Syracuse. We're going to buy some smaller 42-passenger special needs buses that are equipped with wheelchair lifts and air conditioning. And we're going to buy 2 of those. Then we're going to buy 10 65-passenger gasoline buses. These are the traditional large school buses, no air conditioning, you know, no wheelchair lifts, you know, with standard equipment. And we're going to buy a couple of M&O vehicles, some service vans, and a flatbed truck. Total impact of this is about $2.84 for a $100,000 home, again, before STAR. So fund balance. Our fund balance, we started the year just a little under 4%. As everybody remembers, we've done some emergency projects. Emergency boiler project is up here that we had to subtract out. So we're sitting right now with a fund balance that's at about 4% of the projected budget. But I want to just remind you that the proposed budget includes the use of about $6,650,000 of fund balance. So that's $1 million more than we have in the past. You'll also remember we put a spending freeze in place. Dan's mentioned this several times. So what we hope is that we'll come in at the end of this year and we won't have spent all of our budget. We'll be able to restore some of our fund balance, and we'll be able to therefore use some of it to support next year's budget. And that's what's noted here. When we look at reserves, there's a lot going on this sheet, but you know, again, the district's worked really hard with the support of the board to build up our reserves over the years, and it's so we're ready for times like this. And so the budget that we're proposing includes the use of $1 million of the ERS reserve. I didn't adjust it on here, but once we spend it, it'll come out of the reserve. But I've noted that they're in item B, and we're also. The ballot in May will also have a proposition asking the voters if we can use $1.4 million of our debt service reserve and $3 million of our capital reserve to support capital projects previously approved by the voters. And I have a slide here to talk a little bit more about that. Here's our boys bowling team. And this is about use of the debt service. So on December 8th of 2021, the voters approved reconstruction and renovation of the Lakeshore Elementary, Cicero Elementary, Smith Road Elementary, and CNS High School. And you guys are aware of the projects being done there. Unfortunately, due to inflation, the cost of these projects exceed our voter approval amount. And so to address this without having a tax impact on the local taxpayers, we're saying, hey, can we use the 1.4 million of the debt service reserve and $3 million of our capital reserve to increase the limits of those projects, and the voters need to approve that. And if we can do that, we can continue with the work on these projects without asking the taxpayers to pony up any more money in the tax levy. So that'll be a proposition that they'll need to consider. This is our, we just to remind people, we added unified bowling and girls wrestling and girls flag football this year. And unified bowling, you can see that picture, a great picture of one of our students bowling. Couple miscellaneous things that, remind everybody, we've got a new voting location. So our voting at the high school, instead of being at Cicero Elementary, will be at Michael J. Bragman Stadium. And Jill and myself and representative of M&O will be going there to make sure that it's comfortable, that it's accessible, and that everybody can successfully vote there. But I know Kathy Wheeler and the Cicero Elementary School community appreciate not having the voting in their building. So I'm confident this is going to work out well for us. Voting will be, that's for those north of 41, south of 41 will vote here at the district office. And Jill can help anybody who's looking to register. We'll do our annual registration event again next Tuesday. I'm sorry, on Tuesday the 7th. So people can come in and vote, in person, and then they can come see Jill anytime between now and May 16th. Although we are not responsible for the Salina Library, we're really lucky to have them on our Roxborough campus. And part of the law is that they're allowed to put their proposition on our ballot. And so they're asking for a modest 2% increase in their budget. And there's the letter from the director of the Salina Library. And so you'll see that our voters will see that proposition as well. So here we are, April 10th, discussing and deliberating. We're hopeful we'll squeeze out that last $300,000 between now and on April 17th, next week. And we'll be able to have the board adopt the budget as well as do the BOCES administrative budget and vote for the BOCES as well. And then we'll start our presentations to the community, and with our budget hearing on the 7th and the budget vote on the 21st. We're trying something different, and again, we're open to any input, and we can make adjustments on the fly. We're going to do a staff virtual presentation at 3:30 on the 30th. All staff can just log in from home or log in from school, whatever they want to do, and we'll do the presentation. We'll have the ability for them to ask questions in the chat, and we'll monitor the chat and hopefully address any concerns that they have. Then we're going to do 2 community in-person presentations and 2 community virtual presentations. And in that first week of May, we're going to record a presentation and get that up on our website. So there should be plenty of opportunities for folks to come and hear about the budget and get any questions addressed. And again, we flag the voting location change. Finishing up on a happy note with our girls cheerleaders winning the Section 3 championship. And that concludes our budget update. Any questions or concerns about anything that I presented?
I got a question. 2 questions actually. In regards to the transfers, how are those decided? Is it voluntary, involuntary? Like what type of staff are being transferred?
Yeah, so it's where we had a position elimination. The good news about it is we went through all the lists and we had tenure positions for their tenure. So the people being impacted, there's an open position in their tenure area, and it'll be determined based on seniority. So the most senior person will be able to go and say, oh, I'm a special ed teacher. I want to go to do this special ed classroom. I'm an elementary teacher and there's an opening in elementary, and, so on and so forth. So everybody will have a position. So no doubt about that. And I don't know, Dan or Chris, whether you've got any further comment? No?
And then second question, with the 200 and some deficit left, is that including or not including foundation aid? I
That
forgot.
include, remember, we're
under
making
the
a leap
assumption,
here.
right? Okay.
We're making a leap here and assuming that the
Okay.
final budget will give us our full foundation
Okay,
aid.
just double checking. I couldn't.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And it's, I think honestly, it's the right decision. I mean, I think we're going to know before next week. But no, I think I'm optimistic enough that I think it's appropriate to put it in at this point. Yeah, any other?
Yes, so this has been very helpful, so thank you. And it's great that we are, kind of taking advantage of attrition and not worrying about, not getting rid of any current employees, which I think is great. And I really appreciate that you did that. I just want to make sure, and I know that a lot of it, like you said, is elementary, and all the materials we got, and it's based on declining enrollment and things like that. I just wanted to make sure, especially once you get to the secondary level, that the overall quality of education is not changing, and that there's not courses that are being eliminated or things like that. And I know that sometimes due to a lack of interest in that's one thing, but making sure that this is not reflecting any issues like that.
I think I can say with confidence that the decisions we've made have been made in a manner to preserve program and the integrity of programs. You're 100% right, though. I mean, if we have low enrollment on a class at the high school, they'll make some decision about maybe consolidating sections, but hopefully the decisions that we're making aren't impacting those decisions. Any others? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for the work. Okay, individuals wishing to speak, comments from the audience. We do not have anybody today, but we welcome them. Read those rules the next time. Okay, consideration, I'm sorry, superintendent's comments. We don't, what am I missing? A bunch of things here. We don't have policies, or I'll go right to the superintendent.
Okay, thank you. Just real quick, last Wednesday, I went to a wonderful science fair at Cicero Elementary. They had 160 students take part and their families. It was a very busy event. One of the first students I went to was a young lady, and she's talking to me about inertia. And she was talking about and could really articulate and explain it. And so as we're looking at making sure our young ladies in STEM fields, it was just refreshing. And I think I came back and we did an article on it. So that was a nice event. And then, sorry, Bob, we then went to Cortlandville. That campus had a wonderful dinner. And on Thursday, the students there was probably one of the best dinners that they said they've had in almost 20 years. And again, students there in the culinary arts, it was absolutely amazing. So those were two wonderful events last week, and more to follow as we get into the rest of the spring.
Okay, thank you. And Board of Education member comments.
I got one. I didn't get to speak on this a couple weeks ago. I got to judge the Festival of the Nations, and it was mind-blowing, just the amount of culture and the amount of diversity we have in our school district, and it is heartwarming to see the respect and love for one another's culture. And I learned so many things from young students, and they're going on to do amazing things. So I just want to say thank you to Madam Keen, for having me on as a judge, and I look forward to it again next year. So thank you.
Thank you. Comments?
A few.
Yes, sir, Mr. Crabtree.
First of all, a reminder to this Board of Education that Dollars for Scholars is having a golf tournament, and participating. I know our president's participating, and I think there's going to be a team here. I'd asked last year that we sponsored a hole, and we'll say the Board of Education. So if you would like to participate, starting next Wednesday, let's bring in $20. We can sponsor a hole, and I think it's great to see that the board supports Dollars for Scholars. This morning, I had the opportunity to visit one of my favorite schools, and that's Roxborough Road Elementary. Mrs. Thorne and Miss Buffa invited me to be the special guest reader for kindergarten. And they gave me a challenging book and the parents. And so there were a lot of parents there. And one of the parents was a former student of mine. So, you know, we go through cycles. The other thing that was in the paper, because I still read the paper, was Tom Feeney. In his last year of coaching, bowling was Coach of the Year for Onondaga County. So that's a really good feat. And then to talk a little bit about, I want to again thank Al Sturpey and his team, and also John Mannion, and also Pam Hunter for all of their work that they're doing in Albany for us. I know they're really working hard with the governor's team, bring us the budget that will help this district. And that's about it.
Thank you. Other comments? Yes, Mr. Herman.
Yes, I was able to go to Smith Road Elementary School for their literacy night. I'm thinking about 2 weeks ago. I lose track of time, but I had a blast. The kids were everywhere. It was well attended. They had a whole bunch of books free for the kids. They had Irish dancers in the gymnasium. The library had a thing because this was before the eclipse, so they had a thing about the eclipse. They actually had a room in the library where they were actually reading books of different languages up to the kids, and that was kind of neat. And I mean, but obviously the cafeteria is my favorite place. The kids did like book projects. They read a book and they could either make a project of the book, or they can make like a dessert or a cake. I must have gained 10 pounds just walking in the cafeteria. The kids did a great job and they all had fun doing it. So, I mean, I don't get out to this stuff very often, but I had a good time.
I got one more I totally forgot about. Sorry. I just wanted to thank Mr. Flick for holding an amazing event on Eclipse Monday. He's been planning that quote unquote reunion for over 10 years now, and he had a lot of former and current students there and members of our community to help not only watch the eclipse, but educate our community on what's going on during an eclipse. And it was an amazing event, and we're so lucky to have him in our school district. So thank you, Mr. Flick.
Okay, thank you. Okay, seeing no more, I'll ask for a motion for approval of minutes of the meeting of April 1st, 2024. Motion, Mr. Crabtree, second from Mr. Moody Woosick. Any discussion there? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and those are created. That is approved. We're going to create now Resolution A. Motion, please. For Resolution A to create a TA position at Cicero L. Motion, Dr. Kramer, second from Ms. Segru. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. And B, a resolution create a TA position at KWS, Carl W. Siley, Bear Road Elementary School. Motion from Dr. Kramer, second from Mr. Herman. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. And a resolution to abolish and create a replacement position. C, a motion to put that before us. Motion from Mr. Ludden, second from Mr. Moody Woosick. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. And D, acknowledgement of the 2024-25 payroll schedule. Motion. Put that before us. Motion from Dr. Kramer, second from Mr. Ludden. That is before us. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. Accept the instructional personnel report. A motion, please. Put that before us. Motion from Dr. Kramer, second from Mr. Crabtree. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. And personnel staff report B, a motion, please place that. Button, second from Ms. Segru. Any discussion there? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. And administrative personnel report C. Motion, put that before us. Motion from Dr. Kramer, second from Mr. Ludden. That is before us. Any discussion, comments? All in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. And I'm going to make a motion for executive session for the purpose of reviewing 3 legal issues, 1 personnel issue, and 1 workshop issue with no action to follow. If I could get a second on that. Second from Ms. Segru. Any discussion? Questions? Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. And a motion for adjournment, please. Motion from Mr. Herman, second from Mr. Moody Woosick. Any questions? Nope. All in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Hey.